It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a video to step through. Man, let me ask y'all a question. Have you noticed this? First of all, yeah, my bad. I'm on vacation with my three sons. We've been all over the West Coast, almost literally. And the Wi-Fi, some of these Airbnbs was ridiculous. So I don't even remember the last day that I streamed the video, but I owe y'all some content. I remember being on Jerusalem, like, I feel like every day, when they said a day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, that's exactly what it feels like. I don't even know what day. Oh, it's August 5th. I know that because yesterday, August 4th, my youngest son turned 13. We were in Death Valley, California or Nevada, depending on what side we were on. We was in 115-degree weather. And now we're back in the San Francisco area, which is freezing. And then we go back home to the DMV next week. So I haven't streamed, man. So I apologize for not streaming a bit. Oh, y'all something. But let me tell you something I've noticed. We got a lot to talk about. Let me tell you what I've noticed. Have you noticed this? I didn't notice this a lot until I started traveling with my sons. All right. So in America, you are an adult technically, right, at 18 years of age, right? When you're 18, technically, like, you can vote, you can do some things. Obviously, you can't drink or rent a car. But at 18, for whatever reason, you're considered an adult in America. But I noticed this when I was driving and going to tons of different places with my sons. My oldest son is 16. My second son is 15. And now my youngest, my baby boy, just turned 13 yesterday, August 4th. Y'all shout out my son. Little Bear. Buckets, right? Shout out my son. He just turned 13. I officially have 3 teenage boys. Lay hands on me after this video. All right. So when you're 18, you're an adult. But you know what I noticed? Whenever you go someplace and people want to make money from you, your children are adults a lot earlier than 18. Let me explain what I mean. You all, I'm sure you've seen this, right? So we were in, man, we've been so many places. Where was this at? Okay, so we were in the Grand Canyon, and where our Airbnb was a place called Arizona. Now, my oldest son, he's been wanting to see like bears since for a long time, but not bears at like the DC Zoo where we go. He just wanted, like, when we were in Lake Tahoe, he wanted to see bears. Just wanted to see bears out there, right? So we go to this park. This park is called Arizona, and it basically boasts, it's like a drive-through wild safari park, and then you can get out and walk almost like a zoo. We pull up, right? I didn't do any research. I just thought, hey, I saw the sign, there are bears there. I even asked the Lord, I said, Lord, it would be great if my son could see a bear. He really wants to see a bear, right? Not like we want to feed the joints or something. Like, we ain't from that, right? But he wanted to see a bear. So I pull up to this park. I don't know anything, right? As soon as I get there, they're like, oh, have you been here before? Like, nope, first time. You know, everywhere else you pay like $30. Grand Canyon, $30. You get to use it for a week. Go in. Death Valley's $30, right? So I go up. So they say, okay, how many kids or adults are with you? So I was like, oh, wow, this must be something else, because when they ask that, I don't know what that means. So I said, I said 1 adult, 3 kids, right? Now, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking my kids aren't technically adults until they're 18, right? So they're not 18. So I said 1 adult. I'm over 18. I've been carded. Well, I don't buy alcohol, but if I did, they wouldn't card me, right? 1 adult, 3 kids. So the lady says, okay, well, how old are your kids? And I said, 16, 15, and 12. She said, okay, well, that's really 3 adults and 1 kid. And I said, oh, okay. She said, yeah, our policy is until 12, they're kids, and then at 13, they're adults. So she charged me, it was $112 to get into this park. Now I was thinking this might be a park where we don't see a lot. I was like, man, there better be beds in here for $112. They better, if they're not beds, they better have people, actors dressed up in bed outfits. I want to see something, growl, something. And that movie, The Revenant, with Leonardo DiCaprio, that wasn't a real bed. That was a man dressed in it. I need to see that if I'm going to pay $112, right? So we drive in. We saw a bunch of beds. It was a great time. I know I'm dragging on this video. I haven't done a video in a while. So I'm sorry. If the first couple minutes of the video doesn't grab you and you check off, then go. So be it. But I'm about to get to what I want to talk about. What I noticed is this. You're legally 18, but when people want to make money off of you, you're an adult at 13. Isn't that funny? Like all these places that you can't do a lot of stuff because you're not an adult. But when they want to make money from you, though, I love capitalism at its finest. When they want to charge you prices, now you're an adult at 13. That's fascinating to me. So now I have to say for adults wherever we go, whether it's that might not be a big deal to you. It usually isn't, but I noticed it when I was on vacation. This trip, I was like, wow. So they really are adults when they're 18, but when you want to make money from my family, my kids are adults at 13 going up. Thought that's really interesting. But that's not the point of this video. All right, it's been a while. I have a lot to talk about because I just, even though I wasn't able to do a video stream, I've been watching what's going on from everything from the boxing match. Where was it somebody from the trans? Was it not? We got a lot to talk about, but today I want to talk about something else first. So right before I went on this Di-Fi excursion where we were going all these places, it didn't happen. Let me just break down to you. We woke up in San Francisco, drove 5 hours to get to LA. We're in LA from Monday until Wednesday, then drove 7.5 hours to the Grand Canyon, which is in Arizona. We're in the Grand Canyon from Wednesday until Friday, then drove to Vegas, which is about 3.5 hours away. And we're in Vegas from Friday to Saturday, and then drove to Death Valley, which is about 2 hours away, and was in Death Valley Saturday to Sunday, woke up early Sunday morning and drove back about 9 hours to San Francisco so that I could preach. I walked in, parked the car, walked in, and jumped right into the pulpit and had to preach a sermon because I was running late, got back later than I thought. The GPS took us on this crazy way back, which was an incredible part of it, but part of it was not. So we were in all those places in just 1 week. I am broke and I'm tired, but it's been good for me and my sons. The way my boys have connected has been something crazy. But we've been paying attention to a lot of the hustle here. All right, so I've been watching everything as best as possible. There's a lot going on, there's a lot to talk about. But one of the things that I've noticed heavily was the response to Kamala Harris being the nominee, which I personally, so this is what people don't, this is what I think is funny, right? There's a lot of celebration about Kamala Harris on the left. I get it. You have to celebrate your person, all right? She's raising a lot of financial support. I mean, they're acting like they have the utmost confidence in her. I think it's fascinating because the majority of Biden's presidency, she was nowhere to be found. No one knew anything about her. It was almost like she had the lowest vice president rating, I don't even know, in so long. So I thought it was interesting. Then she becomes the nominee, and now it's like, oh, and I almost feel like this. And I'm not trying, if you vote Democrat, that's fine. I don't vote at all, so I'm not on anyone's side here. I think it's interesting that the Democrats put Joe Biden up first to run for president. It wasn't until the debate against Trump that all of us clearly saw that he was like our grandfather who is dealing with Alzheimer's. It was just obvious, right? And then even then, he was unwilling to step down at first. But then eventually we get this, Joe Biden puts on some social media, which it wasn't Joe Biden, but whoever wrote it, said he's officially not going to rerun for president. And then now all of this thrust is behind Kamala Harris. And now it looks like the Democrat. Here's the thing, I'm trying to say this. I don't have anything personal against these people. They were made in the image of God. But if I were voting and I was going to vote Democrat, I would be a little annoyed at the fact that Kamala Harris is only getting the nomination because Democrats tried to throw Joe Biden, who they've known for a long time is not mentally fit for the White House. They were trying to squeak him in again against Trump. And then when it was clear he cannot run, and I guarantee you that the donors that give money, right, to these people to run for president, when they saw that, they were like, no way. It was not a decision based on Kamala Harris. It was a decision based on the party was like, we're not going to support this. All right. And so by default, the money that was given to Joe Biden automatically goes to his vice president, which was Kamala Harris. Now, she's raised a lot of money, sure, but all this excitement and fervor about her, don't forget that that's only because Joe Biden, it was clear to everyone that this dude, it cannot be president another week, let alone 4 more years. So let's not. So, I mean, well, you celebrate if you want to. Because I don't trust any of these people, I just don't care. But I just thought that's really interesting to watch this. But if you're a conservative, here come all the attacks about Kamala Harris. Oh, she slept her way to the top. I mean, I'm talking about conservatives and conservative believers. She slept her way to the top, all these things, all these negative things about her personality, her character, right? And then you got Trump talking about she's not black and all the race. And I just thought, I'm not surprised, but, you know, I watch conservative Christians go after her character. If you just do a quick Google search about Donald Trump, so you're going to say that she slept her way to the top. Okay, here's the reality, at least what they're telling us reality. She was in a relationship with, I think he was the mayor, it was a politician in California at the time. I think his name was Willie Davis, I think. And he was separated from his wife. They were getting a divorce, and Kamala Harris was much younger, and she was having intimacy with him, right? So they're bringing that up as like she slept her way to the top. Conservatives, and some of these are professing Christians. Slim, Donald Trump had to give money, millions of dollars, to Stormy Daniels, was her name? Did he call it horseface? This dude, I'm only saying this because conservatives pride themselves on moralistic values, on values of marriage and family. Trump's been married a few times. He's proven to be a womanizer. He's an adulterer. Remember at the end, when he almost lost the 2016 election. Do you remember what happened? Remember, there was a video of him talking to, was it William Bush? Some kid, Billy Bush, I think, this kid from Entertainment Tonight. And he was saying that he touches women in their, in their private parts. But he said it more vulgarly, and that went viral. The Republicans, I remember this clearly, like it was yesterday. They were pulling away from Trump. They thought he's definitely finished. He called it locker room talk. It was locker room talk, right? He was talking about touching women in the most intimate parts of their bodies without their permission. This is what Donald Trump was saying he did. And he said, guys talk about this in the locker room all the time, right? This is a man who is walking immorality, walking infidelity. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Kamala Harris is going to be a great president. I don't think she should run. I don't think she's running based on she's the best fit. She's running based on the fact that the Democrats were trying to swindle all of us into thinking that Joe Biden should run again. How dare them, right? These people don't love the country at all. But the conservatives are sitting there going after her moral character, her sexual history, as if the guy that you think is sent from Jesus doesn't have equal or worse history than her. This is incredible to me. This is why, you can't make this stuff up. This is why I am convinced that the Lord is judging America. I'm convinced on many. This is the only reason why I'm convinced that this is like, the Lord is just like, listen, y'all don't have no hope but me, fam. So I'm going to allow these things to develop for the believers, for this church. Judgment begins at the household of God, 1 Peter 4. The Lord is allowing this to happen so that the body of Christ can see this and be like, listen, I'm going to vote this way because I think, but I can't put any confidence or trust in these people. Like first of all, if you're going to say that Kamala Harris is not a better presidential candidate than Trump, say it based on the fact that he was president for 4 years and so forth. That's fine. Do not make that case from a character standpoint. Do not make that case from a character standpoint. Trump, I'm sorry, he's made in God's image. I have nothing personal against him, but there's not a person who is being honest about who he is and how he's lived up until he became the MAGA guy that would want your children to emulate him. Now, maybe the Trump that got shot and it's like fight. And okay, yeah, that's iconic. That's going to go down in human history as one of the most iconic photos and moments. I'll give him that. Even I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Being like an ex-gangster. You like stuff that's gangster. Like, I'm with that, right? I'll give him that. But if we're just talking about, I'm not talking about policies. I'm talking about character, personal character that we're aware of. Stop playing with me, fam. And stop playing with the church. Don't act. This dude is he's a habitual liar. These people are all liars. They're all unregenerate. And it's sad to watch believers fight over which unregenerate politicians will do. Remember when they were calling Donald Trump our Cyrus? The church is Cyrus. Remember that from never mind. So I'm just thinking, if you're gonna pivot for Donald Trump, do it. But don't pivot on the strength of character. If you're a Christian, remember the Michael Jordan gift? Stop it. Get some help. A lot of believers need help, fam. And let me tell you, this leads to what I want to talk about. When I saw all these attacks coming, everything from the they said now they're saying it's a biological woman with a DSD disorder. I'm not getting into that today in this video. We'll come back to that. It's been a while. I want to talk to you about some other things. I've been gone for a minute, but I'm back now. I'm back. And I'm back. Some of y'all been texting me like, Unc, where you been at? We need to work. I'm back by the grace of God. But we've had a great time. Me and my sons have had a terrific time. We go back home next week, but we're done with all of the travel to remote places where if you die, no one's going to know where you're at. We've had a great time though. Memories that we'll never forget unless we get Alzheimer's or something. Unless we get like Joe Biden right now. But as I've watched all of the reaction, I usually watch the reaction from believers, professing believers, and I usually watch them from the conservative side because I'm conservative. I'm more conservative in my perspective. But because I'm not afraid to call out the right and the left, people will call me woke, and they don't really know. They don't even know what woke really means anymore, and it's so confusing right now. So it doesn't bother me at all personally, because the opposite of woke is being asleep, and I would just rather be woke than asleep, because biblically being asleep is a dangerous thing. Unless it means death, the euphemism of death, which might not be the best situation either, right? But as I watched all of this play out, I realized I was thinking about this drive. I had a long drive yesterday. I was driving through the Eastern Sierra Mountains. The Lord gave me, I wish I could show these pictures. I had to stop and pick and shoot because of that. As I'm driving through the Eastern Sierra Mountains, I was having this thought, and I've had this thought before, so it's not relatively new, but it was all coming together for me. And I realized something, that the culture, and by the culture, I mean the culture. Culture is not just the world versus the church, right? I think you can be the culture when you give in to the character values of the world, even if you profess to be a believer. And I realized that something was stolen from us. And it won't be new on one level, but I want to break down to you what I mean by they stole this from us. Something has been stolen from us, a very serious thing, us being professing believers who really believe that Jesus is the Son of God and we want to live our lives patterned after his. They stole this from us and we let them. And I want to tell you what that is. I'm going to tell you 3 different ways that this has been stolen from us and why we need to take it back. And some people, and I'm telling you, they're going to be professing Christians who will mock what I'm about to say, because they don't realize that it's been stolen from them. if what I'm about to say to you, and I'm not saying everything I say is right, of course not, but I have biblical precedent to tell what I'm about to say. If what I'm about to say to you, as a professing believer, doesn't resonate with you in some way, shape, or form, I think I'm going on record. I usually don't say stuff like this, but I'm going to go on record and say this. If what I'm about to say does not resonate with you as a believer, even if I show you in scripture, then you are a part of the actual problem. It's been stolen from you, and you have no idea. You have no idea. Now, it's important. Stay with me for the whole video, because I want to show you what was stolen. Don't click on, oh, that's what he's talking about. Yeah, whatever. You need to see what I mean about how this was stolen, because it was stolen from us in 3 different ways from 3 different groups of people. All right. So I want to walk through this. I want to use some biblical precedent to make this point. All right. Now, when you talk about something being stolen, when I say that, I don't mean this as, I'm not saying this as a euphemism, if you will. I'm saying this because it is 100% true. This has been stolen from the church, and many of us allowed it to happen. All right. This has been stolen from us. So first, let's start here with something that Jesus said. All right. Here's what he said. So in John 17, Jesus, it's called the high priestly prayer. This is the only, if I'm not mistaken, this is the only prayer in the Bible from Jesus that we have that's like this. Now, the rest of them are like, Father, I pray that, he breaks bread and he prays the Lord. Father, I pray that you would glorify yourself. Okay, that's different. This is the only time we see the content of a real prayer from Jesus, right? The whole chapter. And in verses 1 through 19, Jesus seems to be praying. Well, it's not seems, he's praying for the 11 men who are with him, the disciples. Judas is already gone at this point. He was taken captive by the devil, and then he's gone to betray him. So Jesus is just with the 11 at this point. And he prays this prayer in verses 1 through 19. But then he prays this in verses 20 to 23, and he prays for the future disciples who will hear the message that the 11 will teach and will also become them. And listen to what he says. This isn't new to you, but it's important. And please stay with me the whole video, because you're going to think about, you've been so desensitized to the seriousness of this that you'll think, oh yeah, whatever, it's just that. But it is everything. What I'm about to say is everything. It was stolen from us, and it's important that we take it back, because eternity is at stake. It's not about the state of America. Eternity is at stake of what I'm about to say. All right. So let me read what Jesus says, beginning in John 17, 20 to 23. Here's what Jesus says here. Now, you can't make this stuff up. He says, praying to the Father, he says, I do not ask for these only, the 11 disciples, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they may also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me, right? He says, the glory that you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may be perfectly one, so that the Lord may know that you sent me and love them even as you love me, right? So here Jesus is he's praying and asking that the Father, and then he prays that we would also be with him in glory where he is, right? But his point here is that, listen, I want you to make them be like us, so that they will be also aware of and share the love that you and I have for each other, right? We're to be known by that, right? We're to be known by that, this idea of love. And we're going to look at this other verse that he says this. They need to want to be one and in unity and in love. This is what Jesus is praying to the Father. The only recorded prayer of this magnitude, Jesus prays for us 2 things: that we would be united, we would be one, and be loving, we'd be known by our love, and that we would be with him in eternity, right? Now, Matthew 12, Jesus makes this comment. He says this in Matthew 12. And this is what I want to show you, and why I want to show you how this was stolen from us. Here's what Jesus says. He says this: and because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. This is Jesus' words. because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who holds firm, who endures to the end, will be saved. So let me explain what he's saying right here. This is Matthew 24. Jesus is talking about the end times. A lot of it to be wars and rumors of wars. It's all that type of language, right? If you're a preterist, you think he was talking about AD 70. That's a different conversation. But Jesus, in the midst of talking about like the end times, and there will be wars and rumors of wars, and people, there will be all these things. There will be people who say that I am the Messiah and all this, right? In the middle of that, he makes this statement that lawlessness will be increased and the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Contextually speaking, here's what Jesus is saying. That because people will be more sinful, it will be more obvious, right? Lawlessness, sin will be increased. The love of many will grow cold. In other words, the more evil we see happening in the culture, the less likely we will be to love people and love other people. He says, because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But then he says this in verse 13, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Now you can look at any commentary you want, but most of them will tell you that contextually what Jesus is saying here is this, that as evil, lawlessness will be more obvious and we'll be more aware of it, that many people will grow cold in their love. But the people who endure in their love for others to the end will be saved. Okay. So this is important because I don't know where you get your gospel truth from. There's a lot of gospel truth and a lot of promises about once saved, always saved. But Jesus makes some very qualifying statements. And he says that you must endure to the end in love for people, even though sin, lawlessness will be increased. There'll be more of it. In our culture, if this statement isn't more prophetic for our modern day, I don't know what else is. So here's what Jesus is saying. We're going to be more aware of sin, which we are. Technology has sped up our accessibility to what's happening in the world. We get news reports and we can watch video clips from everything from people running into stores and stealing. I'm in California, right? And I'm in the San Francisco area. And there was a YouTuber making a video. It was funny because me and my sons were in an area called Fisherman's Wharf. We went down there to eat one day. And I just so happened to look at a YouTube video on something. And it was a guy walking around with a camera showing you all the different businesses that have now closed in the Fisherman's Wharf area. And they call it the woke agenda of, which I'm sure is true, of Gavin Newsom and things like that, right? In California, they've been saying has been going downhill. Oh, this is what everyone's saying. And I think there's some truth to it. And he was showing all these different places that are no longer open. They've closed, but like companies have closed business because they said that people would just walk in. A gang of people would just meet up. 30 kids would just walk in, take everything they want, and then walk out of the store. And there would be no apprehension or nothing. So stores were like, forget it. We're closing. We're shutting down. I saw this video. I was like, wow. And you see this everywhere. We see police shooting someone. We see injustices. We see different things happening in different countries from CCTV cameras. We are more aware than ever of how lawlessness, how sin is increasing. Jesus said, because when you see evil, more people will grow cold in their love. You get tired of it. You start to hate people who do evil, especially when they do it and when you're affected by it. There were times on this trip where I had to tell my boys, I use this phrase, look alive. We used to say this a lot when I was a kid, look alive or heads up. I tell my boys, look alive. And when they hear that word, they know, okay, I got to pay attention. Whatever Poppy's about to say has to do with being on our game. Like, look alive. Need you pay, because when you walk down the street, I have to tell them that, right? Because I understand that lawlessness has increased. And Jesus said the love of many will grow cold. But then he makes, that's somewhat obvious, right? It's easy to just hate evil and then to hate people who do evil things, right? This is what happens politically. And we'll get to this in a second. So Jesus says this, but then he makes this crazy point. But the one who endures to the end, and enduring in what? It's enduring in the context of what he said. It's enduring in loving, not growing cold in your love, even though sin is increasing. He says, the one who endures to the end will be saved. Now, you can say I'm wrong if you want to, fine. But Jesus, to me, is saying that enduring in loving is connected to the eschatological you're saved. It's not just I made a profession of faith. Some you have to endure in the reality. In 1 Timothy 4, 2 Timothy 4, Paul calls endure. They don't want to endure sound teaching, right? A lot of people don't want to. Some of y'all love this stuff I put out. I'm grateful. I'm glad that there's people like Jackie Hill and other people who seem to be sound and who say stuff and people resonate. But people don't want to hear that. People would rather talk about who's gay and who's this and who's trans and all that more than hear sound teaching because because you don't want to hear that. We don't have time for that. Our hearts have grown cold. When you hear about being loving, it's like, man, you think like, oh, that's just nothing, like it's easy. People act like loving is just inevitable. No, it's intentional. Loving people who are evil is very difficult. It's challenging to do it, especially when they've hurt you. It's hard. So Jesus said, the love of many are going to grow cold. Have we not seen that? I've seen this from believers who are just so critical, negative, judgmental. The last video I did, I think I told y'all I was at a restaurant called Nopa in downtown San Francisco, right off of a street called Divisadero. And the family from the church that I'm preaching at invited me and my boys and took us out. One day it was on a Friday night. And so we were there, and San Francisco was cold. Like we were in Death Valley, Grand Canyon, and Las Vegas. Fam, it was like 100 and in Death Valley, it was 112 degrees out there, right? In San Francisco, it's 55 degrees. We were in twice the weather over there, right? So it's cold in San Francisco, especially now coming back from all these hot places. We were at this restaurant. I'm sitting beside my oldest son. And then all of a sudden, one of the servers comes out. Biological male, clearly. Mustached, honestly looked like Pedro with long hair from Napoleon Dynamite. I mean, the same face, mustache, Latino dude. But you could tell he identified as a woman, makeup on, all this stuff. Me and my son looked at each other and we smiled. And at first, because we were almost ready to laugh. And then I realized, no, it's not really funny. Because I see things from an Ephesians 6:12 perspective, from we don't wrestle with flesh and blood. And I realize that this person probably has multiple demons and is dealing with things on a level that my heart just became compassionate for him. I felt bad because here's the reality. All the people that you deem evil, let's just say everyone that you think is evil, you're right. Their biggest problem is not that they need to do right by the standards in which you set that you think are biblical. Their biggest problem is when they die, the moment they take that last breath. If they don't know the Lord, if they're evil, they're not going to know the Lord when they die, based on how we evaluate people. The minute they take that last breath, they are in front of the living God, or they're descending into eternal punishment for the way that they live. This trans folk that was one of our servers, their biggest problem is not that you look like that and confusing my children, which they weren't confused. His biggest problem is that when you stand before the Lord, you're going to give an account for your life, and it's going to be way worse than anything that I could ever think or do or any other human being. So I had compassion. I felt for the person, rather than I was judging them in self-righteous. And I'm grateful that the Lord gave me that heart, because I wasn't always like that. Me and my son almost laughed because the old me would have been like, man, look at this soft dude. Whatever, I would have said something. And sometimes I still joke like that with my sons just to make them laugh. But I'm more cognizant of it because I can do it differently. But it was compassion. And I was like, man, wow. And the Lord, I've been praying, the Lord, help me grow more in compassion towards people rather than compulsion to be like that. So I've realized I've realized this for years actually, but it's more clear to me now than ever that love has been stolen from us, and that many of us are in danger of growing cold because we see sin is increasing. We have so much more. There's so much YouTube content that shows you all of the false teachers, all of the sexual immorality, all of it, right? This is what Jesus said. They're going to grow cold. So let me give you 3 ways that this has happened to us. There's been a theft of love, and there's 3 different thieves here. And I want you to pay attention because you may be swayed by one of these 3. All right. The first thief is culture, and culture has made romance, like love, being equivalent to like romance and sexuality, right? So love isn't biblical. Love is more sacrificial because you're unwilling to. This is why I was joking one time. I said there's no such thing as love at first sight. There's lust at first sight. There's attraction at first sight. But biblically speaking, love is to be patient, kind, not rude, not irritable, not keeping a record of wrong, not insisting on your own way. There's no one has ever looked at someone and be like, oh my gosh, I never want to insist on my own way with that person. I want to love. No one thinks like that. You think they're really good looking and I would love to get it in with them or whatever it is. That's lust at first sight. Love at first sight actually is sacrificial. So in the culture, we have this idea that like romance is the only true love out there. Even parenting is not considered loving in the way that romance is. So what happens is in the culture, everything is about sex and romance. And so you have a whole group of people who are professing believers that are not in a romantic relationship that feel like they don't know what the purpose of their life is. Even though the Bible is clear, Paul said, I would rather you all be single as I am, right? But I know a lot of people who are just struggling with their purpose because they're in their 30s and they're not in a romantic relationship. They're not married. They're not in love. And they're supposed to be because culture has hijacked love and romance for us. And they've made us think that, hey, if you're really loving, then you got to be in some kind of sexual situation. So even these things that they now call situationships, right? You know what a situation? Well, it could have multiple definitions, but a situationship is basically a person in a sexual situation with like more than one person involved. Now it could be just one-on-one, but oftentimes when someone's in a situationship, there's usually a few people involved, and it's some kind of sex and romance. And people, because they've been duped to think that love is primarily about romance and being in a sexual situationship, then these people will compromise even their own rationale because they think that this is love and that romance is the highest form of this. This is just not true. So love has been hijacked in a way that it is concerning. It's about Rome. So that's why you have like Axe deodorant spray. That's why you have all of these dating apps, right? Like, do people realize? I hope you guys realize this. I think I said this on the video. It's been a while, so I can't forget what I said. Forget what I've said before. You do realize that dating apps have no desire in placing you with someone that you'll actually marry. You do know that, right? I'm not saying you can't find genuine love on a dating app, but they have no desire to put you with it, because once you do, you leave the app and you'll no longer pay for the services. The best you'll do is maybe tell people, hey, I met my husband or my wife on Tinder, and maybe they'll sign up for that. They want you to keep being on so they don't match you with people that you'll actually bang with. I hope you know that. It's a hustle. It's the same thing as saying that my kids are 18. When they're 18, they're adults, but when they want to charge money for something, now they're adults at 13. Oh, okay. I thought adults being 18. Well, no, not when you want to make money from me. Now my kids are adults at 13. Once they become a teenager, we're going to charge you the same price as we charge you as a grown man. I get it. All right. Romance, the culture has made sex and romance, they've hijacked love. They've made that be the highest form of love, and people are in the wildest situations because of it. All right, the second thief is actually, I'm going to use these next two are political terms. The second thief is the left, right? And they have adapted in many ways an aspect of the culture that says things like love is love, right? And so they've made love to be, this is the second thief. So the first thief is about romance and sexuality, and we need to we're focused on our vanity, how we look and how other people look, because that's what we think that romance is. It's about, because we think love at first sight, it's really attraction at first sight or lust at first sight. It's not love, because love, what's funny in the Bible, right? I'm reading the Old Testament, but specifically the history of Israel. And it says that God chose Saul, and Saul said from the neck up was a really handsome dude. I always wonder, what does that mean? Like, he was handsome from the neck up. Does that mean from the chip? What was he? Did he need to? What did he need? Would he have real skinny legs or something? Like, with Saul, did Saul need to do leg day or something? It said from the neck up. I mean, I know it's just biblical language that he was a good looking dude. It said David was ruddy and handsome, right? Good looking dude. There's a lot of emphasis on physical attraction in the Bible, but Jesus chose to be unattractive, right? Isaiah 53 had no beauty or majesty we would be drawn. I think it's really fascinating. So this idea of culture and romance and that love is somehow about romance. This is why people will spend tens of thousands of dollars to get surgeries to look a certain way so that they can experience romance and love. Very rarely. You know what? This is how sad it is. So we were on this monorail train in Vegas. We were driving behind the main strip, Las Vegas Boulevard. And my son saw this train. He said, "Poppy, can we get on that train?" And I was like, let's see where it is. So I asked this dude, he was like, "Yeah, you got to go park over there by these hotels." And so we did it. We get on this monorail train. My sons, they just like that type of stuff. It was fun. It was just an experience. I do things for the experience of being with my sons. So we got on this train that was driving. It took 4 miles behind all the main, like some of the main hotels and the casinos. We were just enjoying it. There was a couple we were talking to from Ohio, and they just started, I guess they heard someone say, "Hey, where you guys from?" We said, "I'm from DC, whatever." I'm from Maryland, but I say DC is easier for people to recognize what you mean. Because whenever you say Maryland, people think Baltimore, and I'm from the DC side. Baltimore is on the other side. That's a whole different culture and all of that, right? They got their own culture, music, slang, all of it. I'm from the DC side. So we said DC. So we're talking, they were from Ohio. And he said, "Yeah, it was her first time in Vegas, not his." And they were saying, we were talking about how expensive it was. And they were saying how they had bought some drink that they thought was like $8, but they considered it's $8 a shot, and the drink was like this tall, so they considered it like 4 shots in one drink. They didn't know that, so they ended up spending $60 on just 2 drinks. They were like, "What in the world?" He was like, "Man," so we were just laughing about that. And I remembered thinking, because of the way they were talking, you could tell that they were staying together in a hotel, were intimate. And I remembered I was a little bit sad. Well, I didn't realize I was sad. At first, I was just like, oh, okay. So when they got off the train, I just watched them walk off, and I looked down at their hands, and I saw she had a wedding ring on. And you know what I said? I said out loud, but I was quiet, but I said, "Oh, praise God," while they're married. And I realized I said that because I just assumed that they weren't, but they're just here hanging out, having sex, acting as a married couple would, because that's so common today, right? It's so common that I actually said, "Praise God," when I saw that they were married. Like, wow, they're actually married and not just down here, just sitting like the vast majority of people probably are. And I realized, like, yeah, man, we've just been inundated by the culture of romance that we think that's love. So that's the first one. The second one is the left. It's love is love, right? It's an idea that has been taken from the sexual acronym community, but it's deeper than that. It's not just about that. So from the second thief is the left. It's they make love about inclusion, right? So you are not loving unless you include everyone, which is fundamentally impossible. It is impossible. Those bumper stickers, coexist. If coexist means acknowledge that other people believe different things than you, then we already do that. If coexist means see all of these as true and treat them equally the same as true, that's unrealistic because they have competing claims. And once you have a competing claim, one has to be true or not, or they both have to be wrong, whatever. It can't be all, there's no way, it's impossible. So when they say be inclusive, they're not inclusive of people who are not inclusive. So by default, your whole house of cards just falls because inclusivity to them, and that means sexual inclusivity. It means all the stuff, so all the body shaming, which even though, because I'm fat, I can appreciate that, but I get it. It's still a reality. It's still like, no, man, it's not healthy to be, no, it's not. You're not better off if you're obese. No, you're not better off if you're overweight. I get that. There's a lot of different things, right? But this is all about inclusivity. Like love means you accept everyone, be inclusive of everything, right? And it's hijacked from us. So there are a lot of professing believers that think that way, that think that one, they're either deceived by Rome, thinking that love is about romance and that you have to be loving. And then so they'll compromise and get in relationships for orgasms and things and will stay in them. They'll compromise and they'll start to change their biblical conviction to be more inclusive of things that are just not biblical, and have even tried to make the absence of particular phraseologies somehow approving of God because God is loving. Like the left has so included a definition of love that it will act as if Jesus is loving in the way. You know what's funny to me? I don't know if you do this, but just industry rule number 4081: never let people who don't know Jesus tell you how you're supposed to imitate Jesus. Because when they do that, they think they're actually imitating Jesus because they're inclusive, right? So this is inclusivity. It's dangerous. It's caused a lot of problems in for believers, right? That's the left side. It's the inclusion, everything you got it. And it's like Jesus wasn't like that at all. For Jesus, the most loving person ever, he would say stuff to his disciples like, "Are you so dull? Like, do you not understand?" It's like, what's the problem? What's wrong with you guys? Like, he would challenge people often, even those who were closest to him, and he was the most loving person. Inclusivity is not what love is. Inclusivity is about confusion. Inclusivity is about the inability to be discerning and make distinction and to know the difference between this and this. You can include everything. Now, you can accept that all these things exist, which many of us do, right? The third thief is the right. And the third thief has made love like this tough, that love is always tough, right? On the right, the conservative side, they will say that they're being loving by telling the truth, right? And they will think like, well, I'm telling the truth. Don't get me wrong. Ephesians does say, speak the truth in love, but they will think they're being loving by being tough and calling out these and all of it, but they're really just being contentious. Like, you have to remember what the biblical definition of love is. And their hearts are growing cold. They're very rude. They keep records of wrongs. They insist on their own way. And they're convinced that love, biblical love, they think is woke. They think biblical love, having compassion towards people who are sinful, is somehow woke. That's how much the right has been deceived by the enemy and have stolen the biblical definition of love. It is possible, as Jesus has demonstrated, for someone who is a genuine believer to have compassion on the people who are doing evil, and in that sense be loving, but not accept them as that there's nothing wrong, that there's no sin that you're doing, like I accept you. But you can't do that today. If you try to be loving biblically and have compassion towards the sexual acronym community, the right will say, you're woke. It's contentious. Love must attack others. It must vilify those who do not stand for, it's not even truth, who don't stand for political agendas that you stand for. It's fascinating that love has been stolen from us. And by us, I mean, because if we are from the Lord and from God, who is the creator of all things, then the reality, God is love. He defines what love is. So we should be the people who are the most we're known by our love. We should be known by our love, right? And we should be the ones that live it, even if the culture doesn't accept it. Like Jesus was loving in ways that his disciples couldn't understand. Like, remember in Luke 9, Jesus sent 2 disciples to go through Samaria to ask, hey, the Lord wants to come through on his way to Jerusalem. When the Samaritans heard that he was going to Jerusalem, they were like, nah, man, he ain't coming through here. So his disciples came back and they said, do you want us to call down fire from heaven and destroy them? And this is the Lord rebuked them harshly. That's the modern day right to me. They just want to bring down fire from heaven from everyone who does not vote conservative, or every celebrity who at their concerts worships the devil, it's just like, and I just don't think I think if we're being honest, we just haven't been taught. We can't lean on American history to help us see what does it look like to be loving in a culture that's ruled by the devil, that is submitted to the enemy. How do we love people? And nowadays, you just can't do it. So I'm watching a lot of believers. So back to Matthew 24, I'm watching a lot of believers' hearts grow cold because when they don't know how to be loving without being accused of being unloving in a certain way, right? So if you're on the left and you trying to be loving towards maybe the sexual acronym community, or loving towards the poor, or towards people who experience racism or something, you're woke from the right, right? You just get hammered. If you're on the right and you're trying to be loving from what's good, what's good for society and parenting and family and all of that, then you're vilified and attacked from the left. And so I'm watching believers. I know believers whose hearts are growing cold because the lawlessness that's being, what's interesting? Jesus didn't say in this verse who was increasing in lawlessness. He just said it will be increased. I think, sadly to say this, I think a lot of lawlessness is being increased in the professing church. I'm saying professing for a reason. I don't know if they're genuine believers or not. I think in the professing Christian church in America, I think lawlessness is being increased. We're seeing the character of the idolatry and the fear of the loss of a way of life. It's what I call theological. It's the mixing my politics with God and making them synonymous. And that's a whole different video. And I've talked about it before, but there is this reality that, like, if you're trying to be loving, you're not going to be, you're going to let the left walk all over you. You're going to be, don't you worry about the fate of the nation. Actually, since Jesus said, God the Father said this, heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool, I'm not really worried about the state of America. Sure, could I be affected if people lost their jobs and stopped giving? And then my life would change. I'd have to figure out what to do and provide for my family, no question. But that's different. That's a different thing. That's just as a dad, I bear that responsibility and the burden. So I would feel that, right? But there's a difference between that and saying, because people are sinning more, I hate them more. And this is what Jesus is predicting. He's saying this is what's going to happen. That as lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Nowadays, this verse is about as genuine as a fortune cookie to a lot of believers. And again, I make these statements. I can't back it up as if I've done a poll of 1 million Christians and but I'm just looking at like when Jesus said you judge a tree by the fruit that it bears, that's a powerful thing. It doesn't mean that everything you judge is right, but it does say, listen, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So if I say this with vitriol on all of it, Jesus said, that's what's in my heart, right? Matthew 15, what comes out of the heart is what is evil. It makes a person unclean, not what goes in. So when I look at what people are saying online, again, this is only a small microcosm of the church. I can't say that it represents every believer or something. I don't think every believer is in that place, because by the grace of God, I'm not there, and I'm not trying to be there. But I've been there. But I think it's the reality is this. The love within the church, Christians, is growing cold because they're watching other believers' hearts grow cold, and they think that's the way we have to be to take back, to fight for our nation, whatever the logic is. And I just think, no, if Jesus was able to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, when they were crucifying him. And 1 Peter 2 says, when he reviled, he did not revile in return, as an example set for us. I think we have to, I think the church in America should, we need to do like a real, like, use this verse and do like a real love check. Like, where am I at really? Because if I'm reading this verse right, Jesus says you have to endure in love to the end and you will be saved. So by default, that means if you do not endure in love to the end, then you may not be saved. This is what Jesus is saying. So people won't like this video. I'll probably get less, and I don't really care. Partly the algorithm. I haven't done a video in a while, so the algorithm is not gonna. The algorithm pumps up stuff that's either really popular, but not character. They doesn't want you to talk about character unless you already have a big platform. So I don't imagine many people will like this video, but I actually don't care though. I don't do videos to make people like them as much as I do them because I believe that they're true, and I want to help people who are following the Lord, flawed as I am, but are still trying. That's what I care about. So I have a lot to talk about, but this was the thing that was on my mind yesterday as I was riding through the Sierra Mountains and marveling at what God created, but also aware of and thinking about just my own heart, my church. When I get back, I want to really remind, because we're also heading towards the voting climate, right? It's going to be really crazy soon as the election gets closer. And it's just going to be vitriol coming from the church. And it's just a concern because in 2020, a lot of churches got rocked based on what pastors' stances they took politically. And I think a lot of it is not about like who you vote for, but what your commitment to biblical love, the love that imitates Jesus, right? That's the main concern. And I think we're about to get a tsunami of professing Christians who have no conviction to love based on 1 Corinthians 13 and what the Bible says, and who are influencing other people based on a fear of losing a particular way of life. I don't want to get to the point where like I can't provide for my family. That's what it felt like sometimes in California. There were nights we were like, "Hey boys, we eating at McDonald's." I mean at 7-Eleven. There were times that our dinner was hot dogs and snacks, Slurpees, because I was like, "Man, I ain't paying $100 and I ain't always." Sometimes you in a place for a day or two. I ain't going to get groceries and cooking a meal and it's just not. It's just like we just want to eat. We chilling. So them super chats y'all been giving, stuff like that, or somebody or on Venmo or Cash App. Man, y'all have held me down, a few of y'all. Thank you. Because believe me, them joints come in handy. That's why I can't wait to get back. In one sense, part of getting back home is I'm going to kiss the gas pump when I get home. Do you know I got gas in Leo Vining, Nevada. This was called Lee Vining. That joint was $6.79 a gallon for unleaded. Blasphemy. That is demonic. Let me repeat. For unleaded, $6.79. When I get back home to Maryland, I'm going to get gas even if I don't need it, just so I can spend half the price. I'm going to kiss the pump and thank it. There are things we're definitely can't wait to get back for. Me and my son got 2 medium pizzas yesterday. That one was $83, fam. For medium pizzas, $83. I said to my son, last time we're eating pizza in San Francisco, son, $83, fam? I can get 2 for $20 at Little Caesars. Ain't no pizza $60 better than Little Caesars. It's cheese, tomato sauce, and bread. What are we doing right now? That's the stuff we can't wait to get back for. In that sense, it's demonic. And I see what Ruslan and other people will be talking about being out this joint. Gavin Newsom is wilding. In that sense, yes. But in the sense of love, I just don't think there are exemptions in the Bible that we're making for ourselves today. But what do I know? It's been a while since I've done a video. I'm rusty. But I'm back. We're back in civilization. So I got a lot to say, so I'm going to keep it going. Let's go to the tape. Let's go to the tape. Let's go to the tape. Let me see. We miss you. We miss you. These YouTube streams ain't too edifying outside of sermons coming. Thank you, Jane. We appreciate that. What up, Kurt? Hope all is well. And what are you taking back? What am I taking back? I'm not sure what you mean by that, homeboy. I'm not sure what you mean, but appreciate it. Homies back. What's up, Rich? Yeah, man. We was on a pound, but we here now. We back. I'm back. Kurt, glad to see you back. My comment is not listening fully to this. Where are the policies from Kamala's campaign? All the race thing is a distraction. Anyhow, I'm just tired of all of it. 100%, Marlon. Like it's all of it is that, bro. I'm just so tired. It's just, but that's what I'm saying though. Here's what I would say. I feel you, but I'm not saying you're doing this, but don't let your being tired of it make you lose this love. Like, keep that. Like, you should be able to, in imitation of Jesus, and I'm not saying you don't, this isn't a correction of you. It's more because I feel that weariness of like, here we go. All the race stuff. Trump talking about she's not black and this and that. What difference does it make at this point? Who cares? I don't think Trump is a Christian, but no, the left isn't taking a jab at that. But anyway, I think in being tired of it, it can be easy to be like, you stop loving people. So just, keep that fight on, brother. I get it though, but I feel you because I am not looking forward to the next 4 months. I'm not. Because it's going to be all centered around who the president is. And you're going to hear the greatest war stories about what's going to happen if, and I just think, you know what? Those could be true, but if the Lord doesn't allow that to happen, it ain't happening anyway. And if I thought it was, I don't know I don't know, man. The Trump and them have already done a triple Lindig backflip, straight Rodney Dangerfield joint on the things that conservatives care about, but they're still, so it's just wild to me. And then the left, I can't listen, man. Kamala Harris wouldn't even be up for president if they thought Joe Biden, if he was able to fool us on that they don't have confidence in. They have to have confidence in her because all that money, that campaign money, automatically goes to her, and so they have to get behind her. Now they're all acting like that because she's younger and all of this, and they're trying to sneak in the first black woman. Man, we ain't stupid. We're not stupid. But I just think what a crazy time we're in right now. It's a crazy time. Have the same energy for the faults on both sides, 100%. Expose the deeds of dark. This is how you know you're theological, when you can't bring a critique, consistent and with the same energy as my man said, my folks say here, or has Tasha, you can't bring the same energy to your political side. Listen, the conservatives do not have, and we want to see Christ and him crucified in their charter. They just don't. So let's not pretend like they do. They're more Christian. No, their policies are more morally lined up. Some of them, not all of them. Some of their policies, mainly abortion, sexual acronym community stuff, like with but even then, that's not even, you can't even say that anymore. Some of their policies have been more moral, and so in that sense, yes. But like Christian is about seeing Christ glorified, not imposing moralistic laws that are better than the ones that people have. That's not Christianity. I believe it's a one-party system that's just giving us the illusion of choice. You know what's funny, man? I actually feel that, bro. I feel that, Uncle Snacks. I feel that. I think in some, there are differences, but I think, I feel that, bro, that there's really one party. Well, let me say what I mean by I feel that, because it sounds like I'm being vague. Because I believe that 2 Corinthians 4, Satan is God of this world, right? And that he, I believe Ephesians 6:12, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but against the. In that sense, I think they're all the same. If you do not have as your aim Christ and wanting to glorify the Father by your relationship and obedience to Christ, then it's all satanic, right? So in that sense, I think it is the illusion of choice. It's the illusion of of what they call Satan. Paul said that he appears as an angel of light. So it only makes sense that his servants appear as servants of righteousness. I think it's all the same in that sense. The conservative They appear as angels of light, but at the end of the day, it's all about. This is a different video, so I'll just say, I'm just going to say this. What we're experiencing now, so there's a trifecta to the trinity sort of the American dream is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right. So life is what we have. Liberty, this is the freest America's ever been. So technically, America should be the most complete, thriving country because it's liberty. We all have it, quote unquote, right? So what's left? The pursuit of happiness. Let me tell you something. The pursuit of happiness is left. All politics and everything happening in the culture as we see it is a fight over the pursuit of happiness. Whose definition of happiness is the one that we're allowed to have? And whoever controls that's what happens. That's what this is. It's all over who controls the pursuit of happiness, who controls, and this is why now people don't want to hear from white men and all that. You know why? Because historically, white men have been the ones who controlled and determined who can have the happiness that the American dream stands for. Well, now people don't want to hear from heterosexual white men because that's been the history. You just inherited the legacy, wrong or right. That's just the reality. So that's what we're fighting. It's all over who that is. And so, and there's a fear of not determining who controls the American dream, the pursuit of happiness. So for the left, it looks like this. For the right, but it's all the same, brother. I agree with you, man. Curly, glad to see you back. I pray the family's better. Yeah, man, good. Policy. Folk get caught up in trivial stuff. Nonetheless, my hope is in these politicians. I'm with you in your assessments. With you, bro. Appreciate that, man. Said that was a hard moment, man. I don't like him, but I can't deny that. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but we're just going through and after he became president, he played more golf than the last two presidents in only one term. And he lied about losing the election. You can emulate that. Yeah, so I guess you're talking about Trump. Yeah, he lied about losing the election. Yeah, I think so, brother. And I think he's got all these believers fired up for it's fascinating to me. Let me see. Craig, good to see you, brother. That's right. Good to be back, Craig. I'm here. I'm back by the grace of God. I just been traveling and having fun with my sons, man. But we were in these, I'm telling you, these people said we have Wi-Fi. That thing was die-fi. Their Wi-Fi was dead, bro. It was incredible. I was like, ain't no way I'm going to be able to stream here. I look like Max Headroom. Cutting it, chop. What? This Trump, it had been choppy. For those of you that know Max Headroom, beat your chest. There's no way. I'm more conservative myself. Me too. But I had pulled back big time from these politics and began seeking God more. This has been just yeah, me too, bro. I'm a conservative if I were to vote politically, I'm a conservative. I don't get into who's running for I'm a conservative by values, right? Not by the person running. I don't care about the party, it's the values. In all honesty, though, I think if we were to just take I think I'm going to do this as an exercise in my church. You just take all of the different policies. Don't put them in left or right. Just put them all together and then read them and say which are biblical and which are not. I bet you most Christians would choose a combination of the left and the right. I guarantee it. But once you know this is the left, you're like, nope, it's it. Once you know it's the right, you're like, nope, I don't. But I bet you if we were to someone just put out all the different policies of both sides, don't say where they come from, just put them out and say, which are biblical, which do you subscribe to as a Christian? I bet you many of us would be like, yep, it'd be a combination. I bet you. Bro, I think it's so crazy that you were hitting on the passage and that moment that Jesus prays for future believers. This is a specific thing I plan to do a video on very soon. Do it, bro. Do it. We need more people saying this truth, man, because I think it's just gone. I think love has been stolen from us and we got to take it back. And we don't take it back by hating the political opposition. We take it back by saying, I'm not going to sin against people because lawlessness, because I'm more aware of sin and because it's being increased. And since it's more accepted. Oh, sin is more accepted. Yeah. Well said, bro. Well said. I guess enduring to the end is like him being on the cross saying, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. That's really hard, straight up. Yeah. Yeah, bro. I think it is, man. I think enduring to the end is saying, you know what it would be? This is what I think it would be for us, because Jesus is uniquely different, but he's our example. I think enduring to the end in love would be, for us, a willingness to still pray for the culture, right? Why do you think Jesus said pray for your enemies? Because you cannot hate people that you're praying God do good to. That's just praying for your enemies, right? Is a strategy of growing in love for people. If you really struggle with people, then pray for them that God, and don't pray that God would make them stop doing what they're doing. Pray that God would bless those folks and that he would love them and care. And if they're not saved, that he would bring some. I think that's one specific antidote, right, to it. Pray for those people. I think another one too is being unwilling to engage in content or conversation that vilifies other people made in God's image. I think I'm growing. There are YouTube channels that I've just stopped watching because it's always about what someone else, or it might be YouTube channels that I bang with that I don't watch because, no, don't get me, because it's always about what someone else is doing on the, and don't get me wrong, sometimes it's helpful to know that information. There are times I might say something about, there are times I've spoken against like a Candace Owens, or even on this video, I talk about what the left is doing. I think there's a place for that. But I think there's a greater place for reminding ourselves, we got to pray for these people, man. Like, why are you telling me what Beyonce does or Taylor Swift does at her concerts? She's not a believer. Taylor Swift and Beyonce's biggest problems is not demonic symbols or witchcraft. That's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is that they don't know Jesus. And the greater problem is Jesus doesn't know them by people of faith. So if they're not saved and they stand before God, all that stuff is going to pale in comparison to what's going to happen to them. They're just going to be. So to me, I'm concerned for those folks, or growing. Let me say I'm growing, because I'm not always. Let's be real. Sometimes I'm an ex-gangster, so I have to fight for some of the things I'm telling y'all harder than it is to say them, because I'm not typically, but I'm growing in these things, and I'm grateful to the Lord, because I'm typically like, man, I'm just an ex-gangster. So just imagine, so I have to grow in these things. I'm going after them, and I'm only telling you to do things that I'm trying to do for myself. You have a very interesting way of explaining it. Thank you, bro. Thank you, Uncle Snacks. Thank you. I appreciate it. Jasmine. Boom. It's my first super chat of August. This is my first video. This is August 5th. This is my first video in August. Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. That means a lot. So that's so true. The more we stay rooted in Scripture and pray, the more that God softens our hearts and changes us. We start to see people and situations the way that God does. 100%. I mean, Jesus told Samuel, he said, Samuel, look, he said, I just read it, so I'm trying to say it, but my mind is going in a lot of places right now, because I haven't done a video in a while. I have so many things I want to say. I'm going to probably do another video today, just because I've missed talking to y'all. But he said that God looks at the heart. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart, right? Because that's what we look at. We think that, and I just think, nah, it's not that. It's different. Yes, 1 Corinthians 13 defines love biblically for us. Yes. Amen. You are preaching, bro, Pastor Kurt. Thank you, Marlon. Appreciate that. Here they go. Sleeping Beauty. My boys are up doing the video. My boys are finally up, man. I've been waking them up all the time, so I told them they can sleep in the day. So it's my oldest right here. It's my oldest, my dude.
You live?
Yeah, I'm live. This is it, baby. We live. This is my oldest son right here, the gangster. Boom. Jose. Oh, man. Jose, you be coming with it, bro. My dude, thank you, family. Appreciate you, Jose. Those are donuts from yesterday. See, look, see this right here? What that is? These are people who just give money to your dad to say thanks. Look at that. Jasmine, $20. Jose, $50. Look at that. Guess where that money goes?
To you.
To you, scrub, and you and your brothers. You guys all awake? All right, let me finish the video. Well, he's his birthday. He could do that. Appreciate y'all. All right, Jose. Gas, $2.77 a gallon. Man, Jose, listen, bro. I can't wait to get back home, man. I just can't wait. I'm going to have to fight against worship and the pump. The book, Political Visions and Illusions, but that is an excellent book for Christians. Okay, good. Look at that. Political Visions and Illusions by David Koizis. It defines different political. I might get this book right now, Jasmine. You just sent me some bread too. I might get it. It defines different political ideologies and shows what they get right and the hidden idols. Ooh, I like that. Let me find out, Jasmine. Hold on. Let me find out. Let me see. Political. I'm on, political visions. Hold on. Make sure I might even have this, John. I better not. Sometimes I'll buy books and be like, I ain't get to read them yet. All right. I got second edition. I got the second. Let me see what we're talking about right here. I think I bought this book before. Yes, I bought this. February 15th, 2021. All right. I'm gonna find this when I get home. I'm definitely gonna read. I remember this book. I'm gonna look at this joint. Thank you, Jasmine. That's hit right there. Thank you for that. So he says, hey Kurt, why isn't theology of love taught enough in the church? Woo! First of all, I like your last name, sir. Brother, that right there is the $1 million question. Let me tell you why I think, and obviously I don't, I'm not the Lord. There's a lot of ways to answer that, but also because I'll succinctly say this, but I may come back to this in a different video. Actually, I know I will. The reason why I think this isn't taught in the church is based upon what I've said. I think so when Jesus said, or the scripture says, to be in the world, not of it. I think we've been, oh man, this is such a deeper question than I can. All right, let me just say this. I think we've inherited a gospel, right? So 1 Peter 1, he says, you've inherited from your fathers a corrupt way of thinking and living. It's 1 Peter chapter 1 says this. I think it's 1:18. He says that. So we've received an inheritance from the believers before us in America on what holiness, godliness is. And our not every person, but because of the history of American Christianity and what we've inherited, we've already inherited this idea that you can be a Christian, you can obliterate the second greatest commandment, like from slavery, racism, hatred, mistreatment. You can obliterate that commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, and God still blesses you, forgives you, and loves you, right? Now, we have no evidence of this because we just assume that people who had good theology but owned slaves or did all this different stuff, we just assume that these people went to heaven just because we think their theology is good. We forget, like Matthew 23, when Jesus said, look, the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So listen to what they say, but don't observe. The Pharisees most of them didn't go to heaven. They didn't believe in Jesus. So Jesus said, but look, I'm still going to use their ability to teach because they understand the Mosaic law. So listen to them, but don't. This is Matthew 23, 3-5, right? We forget that. So we think that because the Bible was a long time ago and because the commands in the Bible, they have to work in our day and they have to work in our day and age. We've also inherited a low view of godliness and holiness and a low view of love because if the one thing you can say about America, whether you can say with all that, you cannot say that America has faithfully, and if you say, well, no country has, but America professed to be a Christian nation, right? It used the Bible to commit sin, right? If you say that the second greatest commandment, love, they're both love God, love your neighbor. Those are the second greatest commandments. You've obliterated both of those throughout American church history. Not in every Christian, but a lot of it was. We've inherited that. So when you get to the common culture today, love is more assumed than taught because love is so confusing. Because people don't want to, we're so worried, like America is based on fear. Like even all of it was you know what the Civil War was? And then Civil War was a fear of losing. They could say, oh, it's about states' rights. And the underlying issue, I think the Civil War was about losing, the fear of losing the work, the labor that the slaves brought. And the reason why I believe that that's true is because after the war was over, the North stayed in the South for like 12 years, right? And then in 1877, the Republicans wanted Rutherford B. Hayes to be president, and so but it wasn't going to happen because the South had some Democrat that was, I forgot his name, but they worked out a deal that if the North left the South, then the South would not oppose Rutherford B. Hayes being president, and so the North, the Confederacy, I think it was the Confederates were the South, the North left, and that's what started Jim Crow, the Ku Klux Klan, because the North was there, like basically the way we patrol other countries, that's what the North was doing in the South. That's why you have black people in Congress in the 1860s and all of that. But once the North left, so Rutherford B. Hayes could be president, then all this basically domestic terrorism started. So we taught that was okay. In the UK, do you know in the UK, it is a 5-year federal offense if you even brandish a swastika. Do you know in the UK they make, and in the not the UK, in Europe, I mean, in Europe they make, especially Germany, they make their children go to Holocaust camps to learn from their history. In America, we have holidays for the Confederate soldiers. We have monuments, schools that are not even in the South named after these people. Like we call it that's American history, but in Europe they recognize that was a terrible, and to not return to that, they actually teach their children what happened and the evil that it was. So when you think about America, we presume and assume that we're loving, and we are culturally. But if we're talking about a theology of, we're just as nonsensical as everyone else. Long answer, because that's a loaded question. Every time we bring up third party, people are always trying to shut it down. Yeah, I feel that. I don't know if we need a third party, Kenny. Let me tell you what I mean. This is what I think, bro. So in the Bible, right? This is fascinating to me, but I'm reading right now. I'm in 2 Samuel, but I was reading Judges and been reading this a lot. And one of the things I've noticed is in the Bible, when the people they cried out to God, and God always heard their voice, right? Because he listens to his people, even when they're disobedient and in distress. Listen, when my mom got sick and went to the ICU about a month ago, I usually would not come on YouTube and say that. And I wouldn't inform my whole church of all of it. But I just said, you know what? I don't care. I don't care about my privacy I want as many people that are willing to pray for my mom as can be to be praying for her. That's all I cared about. And so I let people know on YouTube. I don't have a huge list, but I got, 3,600 people subscribe. My church is a couple hundred people, and I told some other people, and people were praying and praying and praying. And my mom just got moved to a rehab facility. Like I've had a couple conversations with her. She's still fighting a little bit, but she's doing way different than the first time when I told you guys a month ago to be praying for my mom. She was in the ICU. I'm using that as an example to say that when people cry out to the Lord, he listens. We're always, even that idea of a third party misses the point. We don't need a third party. What we need is millions of believers crying out to the Lord and asking him to move and letting him determine what happens in the parties. That's the real issue. It's not that we need, because again, politics, it's not about imposing. This is a separate video. When Jesus prayed in the prayer, not the Matthew 6 prayer, when he said, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, most people think of that prayer in terms of his will being done in society, in culture. That's how people process it. I don't think that's what Jesus meant. Because when you think about, well, what is God's will being done in heaven? First of all, heaven is filled with people who love God, are committed to God, and who want to do his will. So if we're going to say we want your will done on earth as it is in heaven, what we're saying is we want more people, the people who know you, we want to do your will on earth as we would in heaven. It's not like the culture, like what does it mean by the culture? We're always thinking about everything else. I think what Jesus is saying is that God's will being done, that we want his will being done on earth as it is in the people who belong to him. God's will isn't done outside of people enacting, cosmic beings, human beings. I mean, yeah, his will is done, but he uses us to enact his will. So I think it's not about, we don't need a third party. I think we need to be crying out, though. Those who believe need to cry out to the Lord and watch him move. And we can be specific, but we just don't do it. You know what's wild to me is like in Judges, there was this, I forgot what chapter this was, but it said that God gave the Philistines and the Amorites over for 18 years over, they enslaved Israel. And then it said, after 18 years, Israel cried out. Now, I don't know if that's figurative language or if it's literal, right? But if it's literal, then what it's saying is, after 18 years of suffering, then they cried out. So for 18 years, they tolerated abuse from these other nations and then cried out. And God heard them. Can you imagine what God would do if millions of believers were crying out and asking the Lord it would change our nation. But when we think like, well, we need a third party, I think we're thinking too theoretical. We don't need God. I mean, God can work through people, obviously. He would. But I don't think we need a party that's more biblical. We need to be more, first of all, we need to be reaching out and trying to save people so that they want to honor the Lord. And then that's how we change the culture. We don't change it by imposing laws that are better for society, sure, but that they're better to us because we're believers. They're not better to people. I mean, that's obvious. A woman's right to choose to them is the best thing that they got. If we say that's murder, then that's not better to them. So how is it going to become better to them is when they get converted and the Spirit is in them and they see it differently. We've made the Great Commission political, and that's why we're having some of the problems that we're having. So, Richard, boom, 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 boom. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. I haven't done a video in a minute, but I'm on one. I'm back though. I'm back. I know I'm rambling today, but it feels good to ramble because I haven't even been able to log on to this joint for a minute. Yeah, I can do a video on that. I actually thought about doing this. So yeah, I will do that at some point. A video on theology of love, 100%. I think some people won't like it because I think we're so confused about what love is that if it rivals what we think, that we get offended by it. And it's like, all right, well, but I'll do a video on that, definitely. I think a major issue with American Christianity is the individualist ideology, whereas the culture of the Bible was a collective thought. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the reality of the socioeconomic capitalism. It's every man for himself. You know, capitalism is essentially utilitarianism, right? It's just and again, I think it's a better system than the other ones, but I don't think it's as great and amazing as people do. But I think it breeds individualism, right? It breeds that. I think, and that's antithetical. Even Jesus, only on a few occasions did Jesus go off by himself. And that was usually for prayer and stuff. He usually was with other people. Send the disciples out in two, right? He even said, where two or three are gathered. So I can pray to the Lord. It's not like he's not listening to me because I'm not with someone else. But there's a point he's making about community. So I think you're right that there is an individualist mindset in the West. It's every man for himself. But that's usually because success is something that people pursue individually and then try to share it with others if they're generous enough, right? So, yeah, I think that is a problem. We are very individualistic. But I think the deeper problem is the presumption of American Christianity. that we assume that the profession of faith or some good works we're just seen as amazing in God's eyes. And I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think if we compare America to the scriptures, we're in big trouble. And so, and again, that's kind of because we're a nation. There's not a lot non-Christians, Christians. But I think from what I see of the church, the church is not ready for Jesus's return. We're just not. And I think more people will be shocked and disappointed when they see him, because I think, again, I've said this before, and I'm going to end with this statement. America is probably the greatest Christian nation in that we articulate truth. We articulate the doctrines of grace, to use that term. But in terms of demonstrating the character of grace, America is long gone. And I think pastors, churches, we watch these. I think people are long gone. And I think I stand by this statement. No one's going to hell because they voted conservative or liberal. If they are, it's not something that we can exegetically say. But we know that if you are unloving, unmerciful, do not forgive, if there's not holiness in your life, we know that there are people that the scriptures clearly say that you will not inherit the kingdom if you live in these ways. So the kingdom, inheriting the kingdom, is largely about your character. And I think it's largely about how you love your neighbor as yourself, because the majority of the sins in the Bible are sins that you're only going to do against someone else. Now, there's sexual sins that you can do just by yourself, right? Lust and all that kind of stuff. You don't need someone else, but you're usually objectifying someone else, but you don't need that, right? But most of the sins that you do that are listed for people are going to hell because of these things, they're usually things that you do to other people, often in response to what they've done to you. So look at the list of love, what love is. It's all character. Love is patient, right? It's kind. Now, there may be actions that look kind, but it's patient, kind. It is not rude. It does not insist on its own way. It does not keep a record of wrong. These are all character things, the way you interact with other people. So getting into the kingdom and living in light of the kingdom right now is not about what policies you subscribe to. Yeah, that could be an indication of what you think and where you're at. But I think a lot of it is like, do you have a conviction to honor the Lord? And there are times when I'm counseling people, I'll ask that question, because I think we often assume that people do because they go to church or profess to believe. Jesus said, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. I'm sure there were times I just didn't have a conviction. I wasn't tripping. I could go to church, come home and smoke weed and watch a video and sin sexually. I could do that stuff back in the day and think I was good. Today, I look back in those days and be like, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord, that you didn't call me to stand in front of you back then, because I was wilding. Most of what it means to live in the kingdom is the character of grace, not the doctrines of grace. Jesus said, hey, the Pharisees can teach you about theology, but Jesus said, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Sacrifice would be theological. Okay, when we do sin, we have a sacrifice. We offer, a burnt offering or a sin offering or a grain offering or whatever. Right? Nowadays, we only give love offerings out this joint. But I think it's that. I think we've lost the character war, and so that's why communities. I remember Rosaria Butterfield. Didn't I say I was going to end on this last note like 20 minutes ago? This is why you know you're black and you preach. Rosaria Butterfield was a former lesbian who got saved and is now a pastor's wife, and she's very popular in the white evangelical sphere, kind of like Jackie Hill Perry, but she's a white woman. She said, I remember this. She's married to a pastor. She calls out her former way of life all the time. But I'll never forget one time she said that the greatest draw within what made her get saved, what made her leave the gay community, the LGBT, was that she met a pastor and his family that were so loving and welcoming, not inclusive, not like it's okay that you, but they were just that she said she hadn't seen that outside of the sexual acronym community. She said that's what they have. They're sort of victimized and they all feel like we're in this together, in one sense. And so she said that there is a hospitality within that community that is strong, and that and what broke it for her was seeing a stronger, more righteous hospitality and community in the Christian world that led her to become a Christian. And now she's got kids, is pastor's wife, and all of that. So I think there's a lack of community in the culture of today, or it's based on who do you vote for? Who do you where you at? That's how you define community. And you can be in great community with people who don't love Jesus at all based upon what your political affiliation is. So we've just lost it. So I think we're in such a dangerous place right now. And I think we're dangerous because more people lack the courage to really consistently say, it's the character of grace that God is after. It's not the policies that seem better for the culture. And don't get me wrong, when I say that, I'm not saying we shouldn't vote for good policies that you think are better for society. But I think if you vote for all those policies, but yet you're sinning against people based who didn't vote for them, then you've lost. You've just lost. And that's where we're at. And I feel like, sadly, I hope other YouTubers with bigger platforms are saying this, because I will. And if my platform doesn't grow the way I would hope it to because of it, then so be it. So be it. You guys are incredible, and those who support me. I know the algorithm might not put this out there because I haven't recorded in a while, and the algorithm's funny like that. It ain't going to support you unless you out there. So with that being said, let me get out of here, but I'm back. You will be getting a lot more content from me, everything from Caitlin Clark and the WNBA to all things biblical, whatever it is, from whatever was going on. But looking forward to getting back with y'all. I may do another one today. We're going to this place not far from here and staying there for a few days. And so I don't know. I haven't done a video in a while. I'm in the mood, the jawbone. So I'll probably do another one. But having said that, grace and peace to y'all. Appreciate you. Thank you for the super chats. And Kirk, I'm back. And I will see y'all shortly in the next video. All right? Grace and peace.